Hello everybody and welcome back to the Prince of Persia 2008 walkthrough. It is time for us to head into the Royal Palace, most specifically the Royal Gardens, and begin our takedown of the concubines' areas, because she's the next on our hit list. Now, having gotten the Hand of all Mars, we can now get the remaining light seeds in the cavern, which is pretty awesome, and I'm quite glad that we can do so. And whilst we are doing this, how about I go into a little, etymology, history thing about concubines, because it works right now. So, concubine itself is defined by the Oxford English Dictionary as a woman who cohabits with a man without being his wife or kept mistress. It's mostly used in reference to polygamous people like the ancient Hebrews and ancient Muslims, because that is a thing. Oh no, it was the wings of all Mars that we needed to get those. Oh well, never mind. The first known use of the word concubine is in a chronicle from 1297, which is the Chronicle of Robert of Gloucester. Basically, he says, and here comes my terrible Middle English pronunciation, "Estrilled her bird sister, her lord's concubine." Essentially, it's... I'm not sure what estrilled is, but it's her bed sister, her lord's concubine. Then appears again numerous times, but it also appears in the Canterbury Tales of Chaucer. He would suffer for a quart of wine, a good fellow to have his concubine a 12-month.
That's right. Where should we go now?
Oh, it feels good to be speaking Middle English again. It also actually appeared in early versions of the Bible, which were written by people called Wycliffites, and people didn't like the Wycliffites. Nobody really thought that translating the Bible into English was a good idea. But yeah, and then concubines kind of persisted ever since. But it isn't kind of used that much anymore. But it is a thing that people know about mostly.
Those cranks down there, what are they all for?
These were the Royal Gardens. The cranks controlled water.
Now we have reached the Royal Gardens, and I will continue my discussion on concubinage a little bit later
What
on.
happens to fish if they're corrupted?
They die.
But first we need to tackle this wonderful and evil puzzle. Because of all the levels in Prince of Persia 2008, the Royal Gardens has probably got the most fiendish puzzle of them all in it.
Watch out.
It's really quite evil. Because whereas you could probably just about get through the one in the windmills and the construction yard by just pushing the cranks and moving between them all, this one takes a little bit more effort than that, and a lot of thinking, which, if I'm honest, I could never be bothered to do. But also, it's just a rather complicated puzzle.
I think we should start over there. But as for how we open the sluice gates, I only ever saw the plate raised once as a child, and I've never seen the plate active.
Yeah, Elika, you're not
Which
helpful,
crank should we push?
Duck.
Just pick one. We can figure it out.
Right. And keep an eye open.
Yeah,
for any
so,
friends.
It's a good idea to be on the left, because it is arguably the easier of the two sides to sort out. You've got a thing of corruption beginning in the top left, and you need to get it down to the, well, all the way down to the other side on the right of where we are right now.
We can do this, you know. I think we can do this.
I hope we can do this, because this puzzle's a bit complicated. Essentially, the arrows that you see tell you where the corruption is going to flow. So what you need to get it for is that the arrows follow a path all the way to the area where we need to dump the corruption. But obviously getting there is slightly more complicated.
Turn it now. Give me a hand here.
Essentially, I think on this side you only need to push each one once to get you through. But the other side is a lot more complicated. Also, don't accidentally run into the corruption, because that is a really bad thing to do. And there we go!
You needed to sound that surprised?
The corruption is in that side, and now we need to replicate our success on the other side. And it's certainly harder than this one, because you need to, I think, turn another of the cranks again after you've covered all of them. It's a bit awkward.
To figure out which one opens which to make a channel to the control ponds.
Yeah, I like the idea behind this puzzle, but it's very, very easy to get stuck. And if you are in that position, it's very easy to get frustrated. So I would pretty much recommend just follow what I'm doing here right now, because it's going to get you through it as painlessly as possible. And you can get back to all of the other wonderful levels which don't require such puzzling.
Let's turn it.
Also, you may have been able to guess, but I am slightly lazy when it comes to puzzles sometimes, which makes me surprised that I have managed to ever make it through the Professor Layton games without completely resorting to guides.
The power plate is clear. We can reach the
I mean, I essentially
Figured that one out too.
just use them as a safety net most of the time.
We need to use
Because I like getting all my pick-a-rats. That is of the optimum importance to me whenever I play a Layton game. I like my completeness in games, which is why I like completing this one with all the light seeds, because it makes sense to me. And the light seeds are not the most offensive and numerous of collectibles, so it's very easy to get them in general. And also the fact that it's very easily possible to beat the game and collect all the light seeds in under 12 hours, and I mean, there's an achievement for beating the game in under 12 hours. But you can do it with collecting the light seeds as well, which makes me very happy. And yeah, we get to fight the concubine now. She doesn't actually speak to us this time, but she's going to get very talkative when we get to the later ones. Right now she's just kind of just going to fight us and use her plethora of quick time event attacks, one after the other, and she's going to do this repeatedly throughout the fight. It's rather frustrating, to be honest, but what can you do? Now, I should probably point out that at this point we are introduced to the Gauntlet special attack of getting her out of the thing. But if you want to get the Concubine special achievement, you need to defeat the Concubine without using a Gauntlet attack. Which is pretty easy, just use your acrobatic attacks instead. But it does mean that you've got to keep your distance whenever she goes into this form.
Keep strong.
That hurt.
Now, concubines themselves have been a thing all the way since ancient Greece. I mean, apparently it was the practice of keeping a slave concubine, which is apparently in Greek Palakis. It was little recorded, but it appears throughout Athenian history. And it can be seen in the law. And it was also practiced in ancient Rome, which helps. There is the slightly disturbing thing of a concubinus being mentioned here, which is a young male slave sexually exploited by his master as a sexual partner. And it was not seen as homosexual if an adult male used a slave boy or male prostitute as his passive partner, which is, oh god, that's a bit grim. So, I mean, concubines didn't have to be women, but kind of, I think, in the grand scheme of how things are perceived, they are. It is also quite heavily in the Bible, particularly in Leviticus. That's a wonderful, wonderful book, which is filled with probably the most amount of cherry-picked elements. I mean, pretty much whenever I've seen anybody try and say stuff against the Bible, Leviticus gets brought up, because it's kind of the one which I think says, like, stone women and so on and so forth. I mean, it's Old Testament stuff, so
We must go on.
it's a thing. And you can see that come the New Testament, concubines kind of disappear. So Christianity changed quite a lot in grand time frame. But even kind of up until kind of maybe around 18th, 19th centuries, people were still having what are essentially concubines, because with the whole slave trade, a lot of masters had their wives and then also had relationships with their slaves, which is also quite grim.
Where's she gone?
And really sad that that's a
Are you
thing.
sure the disappearance isn't another illusion?
I can move. She must have gone.
But yes, the concubine has just disappeared, and she didn't speak to us at all, which is kind of disappointing because she really, really likes her conversations after this. I guess she's just kind of saving it up for later on, really, when she decides she wants to get good at her yelling at us.
So you used to spend time here?
I used to come here with my mother.
Yeah? I don't think she'd be too impressed with the way this place is now.
There were fountains all around here that watered the plants. Trees, flowers, herbs, spices. Things you didn't see anywhere else. They must have been from before, or from outside. She'd bring the children here to look after them.
Yeah, never got into gardening, you know? Hey, they're just plants. We can get you some more. I find Farah, we can ship them in from wherever you want. Flowers, trees. You're a princess. You deserve it.
Yes.
You can make these gardens grow again.
Yes.
I think we can get down
I
now.
have to say, kind of,
Please, let's leave.
I really like how the dynamic between the prince and Alika is evolving. It's really quite sweet. Because he cares enough about her that he would use his mountains of gold that he has got stored on Farah to buy her plants and to get this place sorted out, because, I mean, gardens are always very, very pretty. Have to say, I agree with the prince that gardening is not my thing. I just find it rather boring, to be honest. And also, it's heavy manual labour, and I don't do good at manual labour. I've got your typical geek's physique that just doesn't handle physical work too well. It's all the mind. That is where my work goes on. So this is probably one of the longer areas to deal with. I think part of it is because of that puzzle, because the way most of the puzzles, well, segments go is that you're done with all the platforming within like 5 minutes. And also, that fight with the concubine was probably longer than the majority of fights we've had up until this point, largely because of her excessive use of the QuickTime event. And it's going to be exactly the same when we get further on. She just loves to do it. I think it's because I've chosen to do the concubine third in the grand scheme of things that she uses the QuickTime events so much. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that is a reason why. Now, this isn't the way you're meant to get to this power plate. The way you're meant to get to it is to, on the pole, jump to the wall, climb up, jump over to the kind of bit of the wall that's jutting out, and then jump back again to get onto the ridge to then climb all the way to the power plate. And that's how we're going to have to get to the next one, but I was able to just kind of cheat the system a little bit there, which I'm kind of slightly quite proud of, because that doesn't always happen. You get to do a little bit of playing around with the getting to places in this game, because it is a very linear path, despite all the attempts to make it a sort of open-ish world. You do still have, here is a wall that is evidently the wall that you have to go through to get anywhere.
Nice.
Now, from kind of this point onwards, the light seeds serve no purpose. I've said it before and I'll say it again now, seeing as we have not got a counter anymore, which should tell you everything. So the light seeds at this point onwards are merely a superfluous thing of, if you want to have the bragging rights and the achievements to say, I collected all of the light seeds. That's what they're for now. I mean, the other thing is that they do allow you to get enough light seeds to get everywhere by getting all the powers in every single area. So you can do the fertile grounds in whatever order you like, and no matter what, you will always be able to get enough light seeds to progress at a reasonable rate. Which is a great bit of game design, really. And also, something that I have brought up before, but have never dubbed it with quite the right terminology, is the whole dying thing, and it works into the whole narrative. Because what video games generally suffer from is ludonarrative dissonance, which is a wonderful phrase to say. But Prince of Persia 2008 does a really, really surprisingly good job of avoiding that. Because all of the game mechanics link in to the narrative. So there's no dissonance, really. I mean, there are some elements in the fact that the prince is slightly more... How shall I put it? Slightly more capable in cutscenes of doing things than he is in-game, but then for the most part, you can do what he does in the game. Which is really cool. And I really do wish that more games did stuff like this. Of tying the narrative into the gameplay mechanics, or the gameplay mechanics into the narrative, and making them mesh. Because, I mean, even though I'm perfectly fine with a lot of video gaming mainstays in terms of how games work, I mean, some of the gamiest of games are just wonderful, but what I'm basically saying is that just making things fit. It's like, I mean, even in The Wonderful 101, which is a very gamey game, they still manage to tie certain elements into the narrative. So, the Wonderful Mart, which is your shop, which is a very video gamey thing, that fits into the narrative of the world, because the Wonder Marts are stuff that are there for the Wonderful Ones to be able to stock up, so that they, you know, can help themselves if they get in trouble. And the kind of operation screens work as operation screens because they are in a ship which is giving them operations to do, and those only appear when you are having breathing moments, either on the Virgin Victory or in the Wonder Mart. So it's things like that, where you tie your things together, which really go a long way into making you feel involved in the world, and immersed. That's the word I'm looking for. It's those things that make you feel immersed in the game and don't pull you out of the experience. And there are so many video games that unfortunately don't manage to do that and just retain their retain an over-gaminess that seems really bizarre when it comes to the narrative, because the two don't match up. And with that, we've kind of collected all of the light seeds in the main areas of the Royal Gardens. We've just got 6 more to go on our last stretch, which is going to kind of direct us to the next fertile ground, which is always awesome. And we never have to come back to the Royal Gardens again, apart from the one moment where we are going to have to... I believe we're going to teleport back here at one point to ease our journey from the next area, I believe, before we go to the fertile ground on the other side. Which is a very long-winded way of saying it, but you've probably realised by now that I tend to say things in a rather long-winded fashion when really I don't need to. I just can't think of what I want to say fast enough, and so have to ramble on to get to that point. But with that, I believe that is all of the light seeds in the Royal Gardens, and with a quick murdering of this soldier of Ahriman, it's time to head further into the royal palaces and expel the concubine, because she bloomin' deserves it.